and welcome everyone to the room today. Can you all hear me well? Great. Um, so today we will be talking about measurement of impact, and two excellent tools we'll be considering are logic models and theory of change. But before I move ahead, I would love to see by show of hands how many people in the room have used these tools before. So you can also use the raise hand button. Yeah, so great. We have that's awesome. So these two tools they're used interchangeably, but both of them measure the connect program inputs, outputs, and activities to outcomes and ultimate goals. So they take us from where we are, where we want to be, what we have, and what we take us to our eventual destination. So compared to logic models, let me see. Yeah, so theory of change is a very powerful evaluation tool. It's more nuanced and contextual. It takes into consideration depth and breadth, unlike logic model that is very linear. So identifying the difference between logic model and theory of change can be very helpful in understanding which of the tools to use. But I'll say that both of them are very powerful tools that can be used for evaluation and planning. Next slide, please. The reason we utilize these tools falls into three buckets. So I'll just run through them. The first is program planning, and this helps us look through the entire program path from start to finish, so we can think about the things we need to achieve the results that we have set for ourselves. The second bucket is evaluation of intermediate results. So as we're moving in our program, it is very wise to consider short-term goals that feed into our ultimate results. Now, these results, the reason we do this is so that we can clarify relationship between activities and inputs to short-term goals, and so that we can really track any change that we see, that these changes are not lost in translation. And the last bucket is program improvements. As we're looking at short-term results, we learn lessons, we see barriers and facilitators, and we feed this back into our program to make it better. And this is an iterative process. It continues throughout the lifespan of our program. I will take the next few slides to delve deeper into each of these buckets. Next slide. So, program planning, like I said in the last slide, program planning forces us to look through the entirety of our model pathways, from inputs to ultimate goal. Now, the path is usually not linear. It can be, multi-directional, interconnected. We may see situations where, an input or strategy leads to multiple outcomes. So program planning helps us identify assumptions and think through them. Are we making the right assumptions? Are these assumptions based on the most updated information? If not, it's an opportunity to update. Program planning also helps us identify aspects of our work that goes into our program that can be addressed by others. So it looks at all the pathway and helps us identify, things that goes into our program that can be, coming from outside. So it helps us to ask the who, the what, the why question, So an example would be, we would ask ourselves, who is staffing our programs? What qualifications do they have? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? Do they, when does their contract expire? All of this helps us, make sure that we know who is responsible for our program and that they have the right set of skills to lead to the ultimate goal that we have set for ourselves. It is also at this point that we begin to think about components that feeds into our program that are external, and so we begin to think about collaborations with external parties, and these partnerships, and thinking about how these partnerships may be facilitators or roadblocks, and how we can, forestall or mitigate these roadblocks from happening. Program planning also ensures that strategies are consistent with outcomes that we expect. Yeah, next slide, please. So the next bucket is evaluation, and this is tracking of impacts, intermediate results along the program path. Now, we do not have to wait till the end of our program to measure impacts. We can, this evaluation of impact help gives us a snapshot by looking at the short to medium term outcomes in measurable intervals. And now, so I would like to highlight the word measurable intervals. Now, it does not have to be too close to the beginning of our program, but it also doesn't have to be too far out. So it doesn't have to be too close, so it's difficult for us to see change, but it also doesn't have to be towards the end where it's, harder to like trace the relationship between the input and the change that we see. These intermediate results may be unexpected results. They may be things that we did not anticipate, but that's also okay because it helps us, learn to achieve and fix things that works to achieve our ultimate goals. So we need to be able to document, and that's very important, document and track so that we can link inputs and activities to outcomes and impacts. So I used to have a boss that would say that what is not documented is not done. So if you're not documenting throughout the lifetime of your program, it becomes very difficult for you to, track things. So it is very important that you measure, and how you measure is by documenting, collecting enough information. I cannot emphasize how that it's better for you to collect more information than to collect less. Next slide. Okay. Now, the final bucket is program improvement. And in the last slide, we talked about measuring intermediate results. But so during measurement, it helps us know whether we're on track or not to achieve our ultimate results. If not, it's an opportunity to course correct. So as we're measuring, we're seeing things from the set timeline. So we've set our goals to get to destination X. By measuring, we see how far from X we are. Are we on track? Are we deviating? If we're not, this is an opportunity to, make correction. Here we take barriers and facilitators into account. How can we strengthen and support the things that are working well and strategize to mitigate those that are not? So reaching your intermediate goal, not reaching your intermediate goal is not a failure. It's just an opportunity to learn. So if there are intermediate goals that you set for yourself in the short term, and during measurement you find that you're not there, it's great. It's an opportunity to learn, to improve your program. And like I said before, this program improvement is continuous. It's something that you should do throughout the duration of your program. See, next slide. So we're going to look at components of theory of change and how to build theory of change or logic model. They are just important components that I've spent these moments just going through each of them. So the first is inputs and preconditions, and these are all the resources that goes into our program. Everything that you put in there. So they may be human, financial, physical space. It can be time, natural resources, social capital. Anything that you put into your program would be referred to as input and preconditions. The next will be activities. Now these are processes that you implement to produce a desired result. So you have your inputs, what do you do with them? How do you work them so that they can produce the results that you want to see? How do you work with the initial resources that you have? So all those things that you do can be referred to as activities. Now, output, this will be the direct outcome of the activities. So you have your input, you work them, you do some tasks on them. The direct outcome of the activities you have undertaken is referred to as outputs. So I usually refer to these as like if-then statements. So if you do this, then you see this result. So that's what outputs are. Now the next will be outcomes. And now these would be short or long-term change that we observe during the lifetime of our program. So, those short-term or long-term change that we observe as a result of the activities that we have undertaken would be referred to as outcomes. Now, I would want to say that, the relationship between these components may not be linear. They can be, multi-directional. They can be interconnected, just as long as they lead us to desired impact. I will now pass the stage to Christina and John to share a more concrete example of theory of change.
Thank you, Gift. So, we thought we wanted to share an example of a theory of change and thought it would make sense to share our own, which we recently completed as part of our strategic planning work. And just to sort of talk a little bit through the different components that Gift was talking about and how they appear in our model. Obviously, if this doesn't show every detail of what we do, but a lot of it does sort of exemplify what we've been talking about. We have 4 strategies and 4 intermediate results listed, and really all of the intermediate results are something where we're going to see change, hopefully in the short to medium term, pushing towards that ultimate impact goal of equity and health. That's obviously a bigger, longer term, much less measurable goal. Another note, it's not completely linear. All of the strategies can impact all of the intermediate results to some extent. And then you also can have some of the intermediate results where we see changes that will then go back and impact some of our strategies. For example, we may see learnings from the community or have a potential change in government policy that then will go back and change our strategy about grant making and how we focus our grant funds in the future. Another really key point here is that all of this, as sort of noted with the outline of community and PHPDA, all of this is about working in partnership with the community at all of the stages. We don't control all of the intermediate results completely, right? This is reliant on work with others in addition to our work. So those are just a few key points we wanted to share from our newly completed theory of change.
Thanks, Christina. And I'll just add, obviously, this is a very high-level approach. Theories of change can go down to a very detailed level at a program level. And this is a very broad one that's appropriate for helping to illustrate the strategic approach that we're trying to take with our work. And I wish I could say that the measurement's going to be easy on this, but it isn't. The interim results are going to be challenging for us to measure. And even now we're working on ways to capture indicators of whether or not we're achieving intermediate results. And just for you guys to note, you are actually part of this change. If you look at the strategy around building community and organizational capacity, this work of doing TA sessions and standing up cohorts to work with groups of community organizations is the activity that's in that strategy. And the result would be that communities and organizations share learnings and advocate. So part of what we're encouraging in the follow-up to this is in furtherance of the intermediate results. And to the extent that you guys will tell us, yeah, you know what, we did a great theory of change session, and then we followed up with, you know, X organization that was also participating, and we worked on this together. You're helping us actually see the results of what it is that we're doing. But the whole idea of getting the impact in equity and health, it does flow back to the original proposition, which is that we won't be able to do any of this without a partnership approach with the community. And that's reflected in the initial goal or the precondition, and then is reflected by the kind of circular arrows around community and PHPDA. Any questions? Please feel free to come off of mute and ask questions if you have any. For us or for Gift. Seeing none, I think we had some people had to drop, and we're going to shuffle the groups for breakout rooms, which Whitney, I think, is doing like a mad scientist over there. And because of smaller groups, we're going to actually have the ability to go a little bit more intimate, and so clarifying questions and things can happen in discussion with the work. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to shorten the breakout group, and we'll go for like 40 minutes. And I think we have the ability to do 2 per breakout group, so it'll be intimate. And then we'll come back for wrap up. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into the breakout rooms. Whitney, if you could go ahead and do the assignments and send us off, that will be great.